they couldn't buy ingots, so what they bought is scrap. They went to the scrap dealers and they bought bronze. So the bronze was terribly ugly. It had a terrible ugly color, so you couldn't leave it a bronze color. So what he did is he put the green patina to disguise the ugly bronze. Because if you turn that sculpture and you look inside, then you're shocked by the quality of the bronze inside. That's just because there wasn't bronze available during the Second World War, and that's why you have these green ones. But these are very nice sculptures. They're not road castings. And that's why I put them with the road castings here, so that you realize that these are very good castings. Now the next slide. Another question that people always ask me, they come to me and they say, this must be a Van Wouw, because look, it's signed Van Wouw. There's Van Wouw's signature. Now, there I have Van Wouw's signature. Tell me which one of those signatures is really Van Wouw's. Which do you think is Van Wouw's? If you were to guess which of those signatures was really Van Wouw's. Which is the actual Van Wouw over there? Who wants to take a guess? Yes.
The fourth from the top.
This one?
Yeah.
None of them. None of them. None of them were done by Van Wouw. They were all done by the founders. The founders signed the works for him. That's why you have so many different versions. Look at that. Just look at that. And these are just from a few sculptures. Almost every sculpture has a different signature, because the founder signed it for him. And I've even found works that are not Van Wouw's that have signed on them Van Wouw. 3 years ago there were 2 sculptures that Bonhams were selling in London. Originally Stefan Welsh wanted to sell them over here, and he came and he spoke to me, and I said to him, these aren't Van Wouw's, they're works by Bart van Werven. The name rings a bell, isn't it? Bart van Werven was his teacher. These 2 sculptures were by Bart van Werven. They were sculptures of Africans, but they were not Van Wouw's. But they were signed Anton van Wouw. Nicely like that. Like that over there, A Van Wouw. But they were not Van Wouw's. And who was the culprit? The culprit was the founder. The founder saw these 2 African sculptures and said, this must be that sculptor from Africa. Van Wouw. They signed it as Van Wouw, and it wasn't Van Wouw. So, you know, you can really run into big trouble if you go by signatures. And I always say, the last thing that you look at is the signature of the artist. The signature means nothing. And especially with Van Wouw's signature. It's not his signature. I don't know of any sculpture that has the real signature. I think maybe the very early ones, this one is a very early one. That is possibly Van Wouw's real signature, because when I look at his letters, there are a number of letters that he wrote to Dr. Kessel. The handwriting is very much like that. But again, I don't know. It's the founder that put it on there. It can't be Van Wouw, because Van Wouw never signed the works himself. And then, to close off with, I just want to talk about the plasters. Here you have the most common plaster that I think Van Wouw maybe made 30 of these plaster castings. So many people have copies of them, and they come to me and they say, I have an original Van Wouw. I say, yes, who's the founder? No, it's an original. I say, what do you mean with original? It's a plaster. No, but the plaster, it must first be processed by a founder to make it an original. That's not an original, that's just a thing. It's before the real sculpture, the final work has been produced. That's worth nothing. 3,000 rand at the most. Nothing more than that. And even the big ones, like this one of Professor Maurice, it's huge. It stands from the ground about that big thing. It's not worth more than 3,000 rand. Even if it is a Van Wouw, it's not worth it, because it hasn't been the final work. It has to be put in bronze, and the final hand of the artist has to be on it. And unfortunately, after 1945, that didn't happen. All the castings that were made after 1945, we find, for instance, that his wife, after he died, she thought, oh gee whiz, what am I going to do to make a living now? And then she suddenly remembered, oh, but there are a lot of plasters out in Italy. And she wrote to the foundries in Italy and she said, please send the plasters back. And those founders were fed up, you know, and they threw these plasters in boxes. A lot of them broke and they sent them back to South Africa. And then she was dealing with a firm here in Johannesburg called Shepherd and Barker. It was an attorney firm. And Shepherd and Barker then became the agents. And they got Professor Bain from the Technikon here in Johannesburg to repair those sculptures that had been broken. Some of the Noinkie de Ordeveld, the heads were missing. So what he did is he went to some bronzes and he made copies of the bronze head and he put it on the sculpture, and in that way he fixed it up. And some he repaired in his own way, and then they sent it off to Maranelli in Italy, and they had these casts made. And because they wanted to mass produce them, they didn't worry about the finish. They let the foundry finish them, and they were made in. I saw of the Noinkie de Ordeveld 20 of them standing on a shelf. Where they've just been returned from Maranelli, 20 Nointjies of the Ordeveld standing over there, and they're all posthumous casting. And Van Wouw would have absolutely had a heart attack if he saw the quality of those things that were sold as Van Wouw's. People bought them, and they're out there, and we get them every day when we go, and they come in, and fortunately, the people who are selling them now are calling those things after Van Wouw. I mean, that's what we should do. They're not Van Wouw's. The real Van Wouw's are totally different. And if you go to that exhibition at the University of Pretoria, there you will see real Van Wouw's. And once you've seen that, you'll never mistake one of these road castings or these posthumous castings as a Van Wouw, because they're not really Van Wouw's. They don't show the skill of this artist, because this artist, real skill comes out in his collaboration with the right founders. It's a collaboration. When you work in bronze, you have to have the right founder to do your work for you. That sort of exchange of skills has to take place. But it's an exchange that works two ways. In other words, you can't have it one way, like when after his death. That's why those things aren't worth anything. But that's my story. I don't know if you have questions. I'd like to answer questions if you have questions.
Kruger in exile, if the guy who buys that walks past and gets the blood every day, is it going to
No.
So that's right.
It's been, the patina has been destroyed. In other words, it's going to take a lot of work. It's first of all going to take proper cleaning. So you'll have to get a conservator to really clean it properly, first of all. Now, the cleaning process also destroys the patina. So once it's cleaned, it has to be repatinated. So you'll have to get somebody that can, that understands Van Wouw's patina and puts on a new patina. And that's very difficult in our times. I know of one patineer in South Africa. He's not a South African. He's been imported from Europe. He's working in Pretoria present. And he can put on an original patina. But unfortunately, that's what happens if you neglect a work of art like that. I mean, even a painting, if it's neglected, it goes to ruin. And that's unfortunate. That thing, it's a beautiful work, but it needs care. It has to be brought back. And as I said, it's R1 million work that has been brought down to less than 600,000 rand because of the neglected work. But you can bring it back, but it's going to take quite a lot of money. It's going to cost you maybe 100,000 to 200,000 rand to get it back in the condition that it should be.
At the exhibition in Pretoria, have you got some of the road castings?
Yes, we've exhibited some with the originals, so you can see the difference between the original, the Italian casting and the road casting. And Daniel, standing at the back there, is the curator of that museum, so he knows everything about Van Wouw. If you go there, he will show you around.
Sorry, the terminology of the Van Wouw, is that equal to the terminology posthumous, or is there a distinction?
Yes, I think they're equal. I think posthumous casting is also after Van Wouw. It never has the value of it. Let me give you an example. If you were to buy an Italian casting of Kruger in Exile, like that one over there, and it's a perfect casting, it's going to cost you between 800,000 and R1 million now. And I think that's a very reasonable price, because within 5 years it's going to cost you 5 million rands. I'm sure of it. The way prices are going up. Alright. That if you take a posthumous casting of that same one, let's take a Renzo Vignali casting, which is not an Italian casting, it's a local casting, but a very good local casting. That you will pay $500,000 for, 500,000. It never reaches what the Italian casting, but 500,000, which is a good price for that. And I still think it's below. It should go up to $1 million, because it's as good as the Italian casting now. Then, if you go to a posthumous casting, a casting that was made after the death of Van Wouw, that casting, 8,000 rand, maximum, 8,000 rand. It's the price of the bronze that it's made of. And I say, anybody that pays more than that is a fool, because you're never going to sell it again. I've had guys that come to me, and he says to me, just come and have a look. I'm so fortunate. I've had this big luck. I bought 5 Van Wouws, and I only paid 2,000 rand a Van Wouw. And I said, wow, that's fantastic. Where are they? He says, they're in my boot. And I come and open them. And I say, just take them back where you got them. Because they're rogue castings. They're not even worth the bronze from which they cast. Take them back. You're not going to get 1,000 rand for these each. A rogue casting, 500 rand to 1,000 rand. That's those that I've showed you over there, where it's cast from another bronze. 500 rand to 1,000 rand. It's what you can get for that bronze on the scrap heap. That's what its value is. And that's why I always say to people, be very careful. Don't go and buy a thing if you don't have the knowledge about it, because you can really buy a pig in the poke. You can make a big mistake. You can pay a lot of money for absolutely rubbish. And I'm seeing it in the painting world also. Just last week I had a beautiful Pyreneef, which was not a Pyreneef, copy. And people are in the Platteland don't know about this, and they buy these Pyreneefs and they're really copies. They've been there's a lot of people, dishonest people, that are making a fair buck nowadays by taking old drawings of Pyreneef and making paintings out of them. They take a drawing and they make a painting of that drawing, and then it looks like the Pyreneef, and you think, wow, you know, I've seen this somewhere. It must be a Pyreneef. It comes from a photograph of Pyreneef's work. And then you realize, no, it comes from a drawing. It's a drawing that's been they try to use the same style, but they never succeed, because you always find it out. And you know how clever these guys are. They take an old painting from the 1930s, a painting which a minor artist painted, and they scrub off the paint on the top, on the front, and they paint the Pyreneef on that. So that when you look at the back, oh, the canvas is the right canvas. It's painted on a 1930s canvas. The stretcher is a 1930s stretcher. Everything is 1930s. You can test that canvas, and even all your scientific tests will say that it dates to the right time. But the problem is when you look at the style of the painting, and you look at and you do an ultraviolet test or an X-ray on it, then you see immediately it's a copy. Yes.
You test the bronzes as well. Age the bronzes.
Unfortunately, there's no way that we can test the bronzes. I always say to people, if all these founders had only devised a specific formula of mixing their bronzes, then it would have been easy. Then we would have been able, if there was just a law that said, you know, Nsini, you use so much tin and so much bronze, and Massa, you use so much tin and so much copper. If they only had said that, then we could have. But these guys, what they did is sometimes in hard times they went to the scrap metal places and they bought copper and brass, and they threw all these things together.